what lessons did you take from your dad watching him grow up and working in the business and being an entrepreneur and being a small businessman? Like, what did you take from him? And just so I understand, were your parents still married the whole time you were a kid and they were always together and your dad was there? What did you take from him? What were like some of the key things that he taught you?
Parents were married. Parents still are married. My dad, one time, here's a story about my dad. My parents are trying to save up and buy a house. And again, it's just construction. I mean, you're not making a fortune, but trying to save up to buy a house. My old man gets an offer for a job that, honestly, I thought it was going to kill him. He gets an offer for a job, or he has to drive an hour to bust up sheetrock and things like that. He has to drive an hour, work 17 hours a day, 7 days a week, busting up sheetrock, and then turn around and drive back home. And in case you're not doing the math, that's 19 hours of a 24-hour day, 17 of those busting up sheetrock. And it was like for 6 months, but the time and a half and the overtime was so absurd, it would be enough for him to afford a down payment on a home. And he did it and never complained. And mom had a lunchbox waiting for him every night, and he would get home, have enough time to eat, collapse for a few hours, get right back up and do it again and do it again and do it again. When you hear stories like that about your dad, you learn about whining. You learn about not focusing on your problems and woe is me and oh, it's so tough. In boot camp, here's a great story about my dad. In boot camp, at the end of Marine Corps boot camp, I don't know if they still do it, but to become a Marine, you have to do this horrible event, several days called the Crucible. They starve you. They try to, I mean, you guys are breaking legs. It's brutal. It's one of those final, coming of age things. The only thing I kept on my body during the Crucible was I kept a picture of my dad in the front part of my cap. So anytime I felt like quitting, and I felt like quitting, I would take that cap off and look at it and look at my dad and think, how am I supposed to tell that man I quit? That I wasn't tough enough, that I wasn't good enough to do it. So it just never happened. That's my dad, as tough as nails.
Man, that just hit me hard. Like, how are you going to let your dad down, right? Like,
Yeah.
Dad that ground himself, worked himself 18, 19 hours a day to get you guys a house and digging around sheetrock, digging tunnels, crawling around underground, laying pipes, probably sewer work in there too. I mean, how are you going to let your dad down like that? The reason why I wanted to ask you about that, man, is because you and I both have done a lot of talking about fatherhood, about masculinity, about men's issues. And I think that you and I both see how all of our national issues really are like just sprout forth from these issues that we're having at home. We're having these issues at home with masculinity, with moms, with kids with dads, with the relationships between men and their children. And so I want to talk to you about how did you take these lessons that you learned from your dad and synthesize them and turn them into lessons for your kids today? Because the lessons are a little bit different. Of course, some of the things are universal, but now we're talking about, should you go to college? Should you not go to college? Should you stand up in school and talk, fight back against the CRT woke stuff, or should you just keep your head down? Like, how are you approaching raising your children today, given the political environment and how so much of the political nonsense is connected to our relationships with our children and with our wives, etc.? Like, what is your approach?
I have told my kids, and see, this gets tough because it's some of these lessons are hard to hear, but I have told my kids, you are supposed to be a man, a strong man. I don't care what society tells you. You are supposed to take care of your woman. You are supposed to lead your home when you get your home one day. You are not going to be led around by your nose. And every part of society is going to tell you, you're supposed to be the weak, effeminate buffoon who gets, I can hardly tie my shoes, honey. Would the all-powerful woman can't do that? No. You will take care of her. You will lead your home. You will guide your kids. You will speak. My sons are 10 and 12. I'm already having these conversations with them. And when it comes to politics and stuff like that, I tell them, everything you see on the news is a lie. You need to assume it's a lie. You need to question everything. Question me. Question everything you see and you think. And so I am constantly doing things with my sons that make them think. And I'm telling them about employment already. I tell them, what's your rule number one? If you ask my sons what rule number one for an employee is, they will say to you without hesitation, make your boss's life easier. And then you can ask them, should you bring your boss back problems? No, you bring your boss back solutions. I do that to them all the time now. When I give them a task of, I mean, it could be something simple. Go get me a Phillips head screwdriver because I'm working on something. They know better than to, well, where are they? What does that look like? No. I gave you a task. You disappear, and I don't see you again until you're holding a Phillips head screwdriver in your hands. That's not because I'm a jerk. It's not because I don't know exactly, obviously, what one is and where they can find it. I want you to think. I want you to think and use your mind. I'm teaching my sons to think. When they sit down for dinner, I make them sit there with their back straight. I'm not trying to be a jerk or trying to make them Marines or something like that. A man sits with his back straight, and I'll show him, do I look good when I sit like this? Or do I look good when I sit with my back straight?
Let me see.
That's how a man stands. That's how a man sits. When they order food, look the waiter in the eye and speak up. Boys, especially boys, struggle with confidence. I know girls do too, but when you're young, you're not confident. You don't know who you are yet. Even Jack probably wasn't confident when he was. You don't even know who you are. So when you have a tendency when you talk to adults to, I would like a cheeseburger with fries. No, look him in the eye. I would like a cheeseburger with fries. This is what I would like on it. Thank you, sir. Please speak like a daggone man. And so that's the stuff. That's how we do it with them. I'm not raising them to make their lives easier. Although I love spoiling my kids, man. I love hanging out with them, spoiling them, talking to them. And I tell them this too. I am raising you because when you graduate high school, you are kicked out of my house. You're not staying here. It's time for the little birdie to fly. I am raising you now to make sure you can survive in this world when I kick you out. And they understand that. Everything I do is geared towards that. You survive when I kick you out.
That is hilarious because I have taken, I mean, look, yes, do I want my kids to be independent, self-starting, all those things? 100%. My son is already have a number of side hustles. He's got online business. He's got candy sales business. He's got snow shoveling business. He's got stencil your address numbers on your curb business. He's like that. I went out, 1 hour, I made $125. There you go. Right? 14 years old. How can you beat that? But when it comes to him finishing high school, I'm the opposite. I'm like, you don't even have to leave, bro. You could just hang out here. You could just hang out, just get your life together, make some money, like plan your future, see what's going to happen. Take a year off. I'm a big fan of a gap year if you can afford it, if you can do it. Really get out there and just explore the world. But I understand exactly your feeling there. And me personally, dude, my dad kicked me out of the house before I was finished with high school. I was living in an apartment when I had just turned 18.
Well, I have no problem. I have no problem with gap year or stuff like that, Jack. I don't even want them going to college. Go to a trade school. Right. Go, like you said, go explore. Go be a valet at a hotel in Mexico and chase women around for a year. I don't care. You're just not doing it in my house. And I want them. I want them to learn how to be poor. I mean, now, granted, we've never been wealthy. We're doing fine now. I'm not going to come on here and poor mouth anybody. But my kids don't know what poverty is. I struggle with this, and I don't know if you do too, but I struggle with trying to always give my kids perspective on how blessed they are. So if there is a poor part of town, I'll drive by it and I'll point things out. You see that house? Do you think you're better than that person? No, we're not. That's right. And remember that somebody lives there. That's somebody lives in that house. Somebody goes through hard things. Don't ever tell me you're bored. My kids know I'll freak if they ever tell me you're bored. You have 9,000 toys and things to do. If you tell me you're bored again, I'll light all your toys on fire in front of you. Don't ever say that to me ever again.
You won't be bored.
Don't tell me you're hungry. Don't tell me you're bored. You have a pantry full of food. You don't know what hunger is either. And I try to drive that home. Part of the reason I want them kicked out is I want you to go get a crappy apartment with a roommate who's a jerk on the bad part of town and find out how the other half lives because they don't know. What do my kids know?
I tried to explain to my kids some of the same thoughts about where we are in our context, and it's like, I'm doing great, but we live in an area where people aren't just doing great. These are like the ultimate rich folks in the country in Bethesda and Loudoun County in this area in DC, 7 of the top 10 richest counties in the country right here in DC. And so there's always somebody way richer everywhere around. So the kids have had some like humbling done in that regard too. But, Jesse, when I got doxxed, I got fired. I was out of work for a couple of years, and like they experienced what it was like to make decisions based on like how many dollars are available, like we can do this or we can do that, guys. And so they've actually really come up not spoiled. So now when I do try to spoil them and give them stuff, they're like awkward about it. and they get uncomfortable, and it's the best. It's the
That's
best because
awesome.
I can give them whatever I want or whatever I think they need, and then they love and appreciate every single bit of it. And they luckily, the kids just aren't spoiled. That's just such a feat, I think, for me. I'm really pleased by it. Not that we've had material excess to spoil them, but it's a mindset, it's a mentality, it's I'm owed this, I deserve this. My kids all know that they have to work for it because they work for everything here at the house.